right? All right, so that's the Wing Chun punch. You want to hand flowers. So about the Wing Chun punch. You see it a lot in the Ip Man movies where the chain punch. So we're going to talk about the dynamics of it and the details of it. So I'm going to demonstrate the punch itself. It's at first it's down when you're training it, down and straight. Okay, it doesn't go like this. It's down and straight. But when you start training it more smoothly, it's going to look like this. So you don't see the physical drop looking like as a different step. It's continuous. Okay, so it's continuous. Okay, so that's the Wing Chun punch, and you see it's coming from my center, and you see that as this comes down, this replaces it, replaces it, replaces it, replaces it. I'm gonna actually punch from the side view right now, and he's gonna show you what it looks like. And I'm gonna go grab something real quick to help him with his not using wrist. Okay, all right. So, good. All right, so let's do this. So we're gonna put this in here. I'm gonna cut this. So this is a boba straw. So if you like milk tea, which I do, this can help greatly. All right. So let's face the camera real quick. Yeah, okay, so right now, what I've given him is 2 boba straws cut in half, okay? But from this point on, we're gonna assume they are flowers, okay? These are the stems of the flowers. Flowers are up here. And he's going to, instead of calling this chain punching, we're gonna say handing flowers. And the reason why we want that is we don't want the fist to be so tight that when he squeezes, the stem and the flowers break, okay? So as he's punching, I should be able to pull the flowers right out of his hands, meaning he's not activating too much from the wrist, okay? That's a few more punches. Good. I'm gonna grab it from here. So very good, right? So the reason why we don't want that, hope you're enjoying the content. If you do, please like and subscribe, it'd be very much appreciated. Typically when people make a fist, they tend to ball it up, make it really tight. And so most people don't say, oh, punch with a relatively structured but relaxed fist. It's a strong fist, and they tend to ball it all up like it's like a sledgehammer. And so when they hit you with the sledgehammer. Problem with that is as you go and you throw a lot of power behind it, if you miss, well, it tends to drag you down, okay? With the Wing Chun punch, we actually take the sledgehammer or the iron part of it, the power, not the surprise of the punch comes from the bone, but we flip this around, and so when you go to punch, it looks like a battering ram. So if I miss, because we throw chain punches, it doesn't pull me down. Now, if I were to do this, and let's just say hand it out, like this is my fist, and I hand it out, you can almost feel like I have to, it's heavy, so I have to hold it up. That's why that motion of if you miss, you tend to kind of dip and lose balance. So when you do this, and I go to hand it, it's much easier. There's not a lot of strength that I need to use to hold this up versus this. So it goes from this to this. The structure of the Wing Chun punch, we don't punch with the top 2 knuckles, we actually punch with the bottom 3. If you actually look at the structure of the arm, the 3 knuckles actually are supported by the whole forearm. If you look at the top 2 knuckles, this knuckle tends to have a gap. So when we punch, everything is supported by the forearm. And of the 2 bones, in the arm, the bottom bone is the more denser bone. So it actually helps give us structure and density when we punch. So we're using more bone striking versus like strength punching. We have a phrase in Wing Chun that we say, it's hands like arrows, feet like wheels, okay? The feet like wheels is footwork, which we'll discuss in another video at some point. but let's talk about hands like arrows. Okay, so we were just talking about handing flowers, right? So if you hand flowers, you don't want to be rude and give someone a flower. And here's a flower, right? So it's just handing a flower to them. And when I hand a flower, I want to fully extend my punch because I want to hand it to them. I'm polite, right? I don't want to have to make them reach, so I'm just going to hand it to them. Hand the flowers, okay? So when we say hand the flowers, it's also another phrase that we use is hands like arrows, right? So what do we mean by? So when we talk about hands like arrows, think of this as an arrow, right? So we shoot a bow through the arrow, shoot a bow, and we pull the arrow back. And when we launch the arrow, and the arrow's flying through the air now, right? So we go, boom, flies through the air. Well, now it's an inanimate object, right? So as it's going through the air, if someone were to block it, well, if I go to block it, well, it's just gonna, if I go to block it, it's just gonna move away, right? It's gonna be pushed away and keep going. So the arrow never pushes back because it's inanimate. There's no muscle, there's no person behind it. Once it's through the air, it's flying. If you move it, it just goes off to a different path, right? So if it's coming towards the camera, if someone were to knock it off path, it's gonna go like this. Versus if many people that punch and they throw a punch and someone goes to block it, well, they tend to push back, so I'm pushing back this way, right? That's not how an arrow moves. So in Wing Chun, as we throw the punch, it's like an arrow. So if someone takes it offline, it has that kind of motion, which then tells us how far that your opponent has pushed you offline or where the energy is going, right? So the energy is going where? It's going this way, right? Because I'm going straight towards the guy's face or the center, and the guy decides to push it away, right? So I let him because then I'm going to replace it, okay? So that's hands like arrows. One way to condition your knuckles for punching, and then also not to use too much wrist, because once you use wrist, it gets tight, right? It's tension. We don't want tension. We want velocity. We want relaxation, which then creates the power of the Wing Chun punch comes from velocity. The more relaxed the punch your arms are with structure, and the faster you can throw through the air, it's like an arrow. When you shoot the arrow, it's not that you have a bigger tip that makes it stronger, it's how fast that arrow flies through the air, right? So, and smoothly. So that's like our punch, right? So you can't have a lot of tension in the wrist, but most people have problems is that when you make a fist, because it's so tight, it tends to activate your wrist. So that's why we have the flowers. But another way to actually build structure over time is to do what we do in my class is Wing Chun holds, which is kind of like planking, conditioning. I'm going to just briefly show it to you, but that'll be another video when we talk about conditioning drills. But it's literally you want to 3 knuckles, right? And then you're going to kind of plank yourself on the ground, bend your elbows and hold, right? And look straight ahead, straight towards the ground, right? Like that's your opponent, right? So then you're building structure here, you're building control here without using too much wrist, and then you're conditioning your knuckles at the same time. So I'm going to demonstrate on a phone book. We taped it up with duct tape, pretty thick one, so it's hard to find these ones now, but if we have the phone book, right? So what we want to do, we also punch with the bottom 3 knuckles. So if I place on the bottom, right, we're hit with body structure, right? So if I hit it, I can kind of throw them back. And I'm not throwing with a lot of power, right? I'm not going, right? All right, so that's the Wing Chun punch. You want to hand flowers, so it's not a floppy fist. It's a structured fist with holding flowers and connecting the 3 bones to your forearm.